Hello and welcome to CMeeCraft Gaming First Looks, your premier destination for coverage on all sorts of new Steam releases. I'm CMeeCraft, and today we are looking at Cactus Canyon, which from my understanding is kind of a first-person shooter sort of thing. So let's go! Now also, from my understanding, this is kind of somewhat inspired by kind of old first-person shooters like your Dooms and the like. Whatever was before Doom as well, I guess. And by Doom, I mean like the one from like the 90s, not the one from like a couple years ago. And obviously it's Western themed, as you can kind of tell, I presume. Yeah, but, so, I don't personally have any, like, nostalgia or anything for these types of shooters. I'm just simply not old enough, really. Before my time. So, which, I don't know, maybe that makes me a terrible judge of this, because I don't even really have much familiarity with what they're kind of going for. On the other hand, I won't be kind of nostalgia blinded like all you 30-somethings that are surely in the comments saying, "Oh, well, shooters are so much better back in my day. Now all your stupid Call of Duties and Halos and whatnot," is Halo even still relevant? Are just are not nearly as good as what we had back in my day. We've almost got a grid all the way up. And that's probably good. Oh, space off for next level. Okay, let's go. Is there any reason to not just constantly shoot like this? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Arthur, do you have any other weapons, or is it just, I'm not seeing anything. I think it's just the double pistols. So far the game isn't too difficult. Seems fairly simple and straightforward. I think we already have our grid all the way up. I think the key is just strafing. Yeah. It's hard to hit a moving target, so be a moving target. Oh man, I'm getting some frame dropping, and I'm not certain. Okay, I guess some program just kind of kicked me out of the game, some external program, but we're back. We're back. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, all of the enemies seem to their movement patterns seem to be entirely deterministic. Like, we don't have any enemies that kind of organically pathfind to you. We've got either these crabs that shuffle side to side, or these cacti that just sit in one place. Which is worth noting, I think. There we go. Next level. Ooh. Tricky. Also, from my understanding, I believe these levels are procedurally generated. I think the store page said something like that, and based on what these levels have on offer, I believe it. I mean, nothing against the levels, of course. It's just, yeah, procedurally generated levels kind of feel, generally speaking, usually feel procedurally generated, you know? And these certainly feel like they could have easily been procedurally generated. Which theoretically should give the game more replayability. The question, though, is, I mean, with only seemingly only two enemy types, and one kind of level theme, is there really enough variety here? And then, and as well as that, the gameplay itself is quite simple as well. Going by modern standards, you know. I mean, we don't even have different types of guns or anything. Alright, next level. It always starts like this. I don't know. We'll see. I think the game might be could have been a bit, now, granted, I'm not certain if difficulty was what they were going for, but it probably could have been made a bit more difficult if they made health drops a bit rarer. As it stands right now, I'm doing fairly well in maintaining my health. Not really because I'm not getting shot, but more so because there's more than enough health packs to basically keep me alive even as I'm getting shot. Anyways, also speaking of getting shot, another interesting thing here to note, all of the enemies appear to be using projectile-based weapons and not hit scan weapons, which is kind of cool. That's not something you see in a lot of shooters these days. Yeah, that's nice. It gives you the opportunity to try to dodge the bullet, as it were. Which is nice. Again, that's not something you see too much anymore. At least not in kind of your major, like, shooter stuff. Hit scan weapons are kind of the go-to these days, but so it's nice to see this game giving projectile weapons some love. Now, I'm not certain if the levels are increasing in difficulty or not as we go through this. It's possible they are, it's possible they aren't, who knows. I certainly don't. At the moment. I do feel like there might be more enemies than there were towards the beginning of the game. Certainly am actually getting hit a bit more than I was at the beginning. Also, we've got our grit up to the maximum, and I'm not entirely certain what that does. Also, we are almost about to die. Ooh. Now one interesting thing with the health packs is it kind of forces you to, if you're getting shot, go in closer range where the enemies can more easily hit you. Because it seems like they don't actually even start shooting at you until you get within a certain range, so you can kind of just snipe them like this. But if you're on health and you want to get that health pack, you've got to get in closer range. Because if you don't, they will kind of despawn eventually. Okay. I do think this is a solid foundation. I mean, the game itself kind of the game itself, it's running fine, and the gameplay is decent. You know, this kind of run and gun sort of thing, with kind of naturally dodging all of the incoming projectiles and whatnot, or at least as many as you can dodge, is compelling. I think it would be nice if maybe there's a bit more to it, you know? Like, this is a pretty good proof of concept, you know? And the graphics are kind of old and outdated looking, but something tells you that that was probably the point. Yeah, and I mean, to be fair to the developers, this is, yeah, the graphics are kind of old and outdated looking, but at least they're old and outdated looking in a way that you don't see too often, you know? Normally people people don't generally try to replicate this particular style of old graphics. Okay. Things certainly do seem to be getting a bit more crazy. But I know what it is here is certainly competently executed, even if I don't understand exactly what grit does. And yeah, I mean, it's not super difficult, but it's not entirely mindless, you know. There's a bit of a challenge to be had here. Oh! Got flanked by a cactus. Okay. And the procedural generation is an interesting thing because, of course, it does theoretically add replayability, but the issue is there's so little kind of differences within the game. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, the levels are all laid out a bit differently, but ultimately, you're always using the same guns, fighting the same types of enemies in the same type of environment, which leaves all of the levels feeling kind of samey, yeah? Alright, which kind of ends up leaving you in a situation where you're in kind of like, well, you've seen one level, you've seen them all. I've determined I do think the difficulty is ramping up a bit as time goes on. I'd rather not die. I wonder what happens if you do die, though. Why is there beeping noises? Is it because I'm on 1 health? Are they? I think they might be dropping health packs less frequently. There we go. There we go. Alright, back up to 4 health. Nice. Okay, whew. I feel like this is always in kind of like the same place as well. Alright, we've been through how many levels now? I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. And they've all been very samey, so you can probably conclude that this is how the game intends to go on. So let's talk about it then. What's it called, Cactus Canyon? I guess you kind of go for a high score. Like we're at 71,600. That's what you want to do, I guess. So, what do I think of this game? Well, first we should start by stating that this is only $1 on Steam. So, you know, I mean, you can't expect the world from a $1 game. And what's on offer here, what they do have is legitimately decent. The graphics are decent looking, and do the job, certainly. Again, they're old school, but they're old school in kind of a unique way as well, and they don't look bad. At least in my opinion. I don't know why we're fighting crabs, though. That's kind of strange. Yeah, the first-person stuff is fairly well implemented. The gameplay's fine. And, I mean, ultimately the question is, are you willing to pay for this? In my opinion, this kinda seems more like a proof of concept than a fully fledged game. You know, I could see potential with doing this kind of old school shooter art style, old school shooter gameplay sort of thing. Make kind of like use procedural generation, make like a, I don't know, add in other weapons and stuff and make kind of a roguelike sort of thing. Which is this technic? Nah, I don't think I would qualify this as even the roguelite or whatever. In its current state, I mean, ultimately, it depends. I mean, I'm sure there are probably better, more fleshed out versions of this sort of old school shooter sort of thing. I won't deny, I mean, it's definitely got an entertainment value. But to me, this kind of feels more like something I'd expect to see kind of for free up on itch.io than for $1 on Steam. I don't know, maybe that's just me being unfair to this game. But yeah. I mean, there's not much here. What is here is alright. It's a perfectly acceptable, old school style first person shooter. And yeah. One thing is, I will say though, is the graphics are somewhat inconsistent because you got the 2D sprites for the kind of enemies, and then the 3D models for the cacti. But yeah, I mean, it's a perfectly fine way to pass the time. Not sure I would. Ultimately, it's your decision. If you're willing to pay $1 for this, then it's certainly executed fine. It's a good time waster, you know. I could see myself potentially, if I've got a few minutes, maybe load this up, play a couple levels. But ultimately, the lack of structure, I think, hurts it. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of arcadey, I'd say, with really no real narrative structure or solid gameplay structure, and the only real goal or motivation being to kind of rack up a high score. I think this is definitely something you could, oh my gosh, you could build upon. But ultimately, I think the lack of structure kind of hurts it a bit. Yeah. The gameplay's fine. I just wish there was a bit more substance to what surrounded it, I guess, is what this comes down on. But out of curiosity, what happens when you die? You were killed. Rest in peace. Mobs killed 490, rounds 112, time played 16 minutes 44 seconds, score 94,000. And yeah. And ultimately, that's the main issue, and that time played. Yeah, I mean, I've played for 15 minutes. I feel like I've seen all the game has to offer. Arguably, you play for 1 minute and you've seen all the game has to offer. Yeah, it's got the procedurally generated levels, which theoretically help the replay value, but ultimately, you've really seen all the game has to offer within the first couple minutes of playing. And it's really up to you whether you think that's worth paying $1 for. I mean, it's $1. It's hard to be too tough on a game that's only asking $1. But yeah, it's still a cash investment. So there you go. Cactus, whatever this was called, Cactus Canyon. Perfectly acceptable, inoffensive little game. That's a bit content short, I'd say, even for a $1 game, you know? Like, if this... And ultimately, the thing is, with the procedural generation, yeah, theoretically you have infinite levels here, but they all feel exactly the same. So really, after you've played one level, I'd say you've really experienced kind of the entire game. If this had, like, maybe... Like, I don't know. I feel like with... Yeah. Anyways, guys, so do I recommend it or not? Ultimately, you know, it's your call, based on what you've seen here. It's certainly a fine distraction, and the question is, do you think that the content on sale here is worth $1? The gameplay is fine, solid, but I'm just not certain if the content surrounding it is worth the price. But anyways, guys, this has been Cactus Canyon. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more of these first looks. We've got a new one coming out every day on a new and very relevant Steam release. Be sure to also check out my Let's Play channel, where I actually don't play first-person shooters very often, but play all sorts of other different kinds of games in kind of longer format series. And until next time, guys, I've been CMeeCraft, and I'll catch you in the next first look. Goodbye.